going to talk about beating the blues and helping our immune system. And I wanted to introduce you. This is Trevor Williams, again with the Ohio State University Extension Services. And she is an area leader and educator with family and consumer sciences, specializing in food preservation, food safety, and healthy relationships. So thank you very much, Treva, if you'd like to start.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works right. So let me wait just a second here. So are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, we are. Well, we did. There we go.
Okay, so we're good. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here today. I will ask for some help in monitoring chat and those kinds of things because I can't see everything when I'm doing this. So today what we're going to be talking about, as Mary said, is we're really going to be looking at how to boost our immune system and beat those winter blues. And if you're like me, this week has certainly been one of those challenging weeks. So one of the things that we want to talk about is we're going to start with how does winter affect you physically, emotionally, and mentally. But before we do that, I want to go to my next slide. I want to tell you just briefly about Ohio State University Extension, just so you kind of understand where I'm coming from and what we do. So OSU Extension is part of Ohio State University. We're in all 88 counties, and we are that community education arm of the university. So they do teaching on campus, they do research, and then we're the group that really brings that education out here to the counties. So I just wanted to put that in there just so you kind of got a better idea of that. We're funded through county, state, and federal funds. So as you go through this, we tried to remove all names of products and those kinds of things. So, you know, if there happens to be something, we're not endorsing anything. We're just simply giving you the education information. So today, as we're getting started, we're going to look at how winter affects us. And one of the things that we know is that in the winter, I don't have to tell you that the natural light decreases drastically. But what happens is not only does that decrease, it actually changes our brain chemistry, which is kind of a scary thought in some ways, I guess. But what happens is when we have less natural light, then our serotonin in our bodies tends to drop. Well, when serotonin drops, the levels of our sleep producing or sleep promoting melatonin increase. And so that combination of those changes within those two chemicals really can lead us to some mild depression, or in some cases, a more serious condition called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. Now, one of the things with SAD is that it is a type of depression, just like I mentioned. And while we tend to associate it with winter, I actually had a coworker that told me, she said, you know, Treva, my symptoms start earlier than that. They actually start in the fall. And she said, I think it's just because I know it's coming and I start to get that pull toward that little bit of depression. But for anybody that does have this disorder, it does tend to happen about the same time each year. So if you're one of those people that this starts to happen a little earlier, there's nothing wrong with you. We just all have different systems. But it tends to continue then on into the winter months. So depression is, as defined by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, is a period of 2 or more weeks of depressed mood where we just lose interest. We lose interest or pleasure in our daily activities, and we have a variety of symptoms. But there are some factors that can attribute to this, and for one of those big risk factors is it's being female. So Seasonal affective disorder is actually diagnosed 4 times more often in women than it is in men. Other factors are where we live. Yeah, anybody that lives far north or far south of the equator, there is a greater possibility of having seasonal affective disorder, just because we have those days become shorter, which then leads to that increase in melatonin. There also could be a family history. So not only just a family history of depression, but also a family history of seasonal affective disorder. There's also some ties between it, and if you have depression or bipolar disorder, then there's a greater tendency to have seasonal affective disorder. Something that's kind of a little surprising is the fact that also it impacts our younger adults more than our older adults, which was really kind of a surprise to me as we started to put together the presentation. So it's been reported even in children and teens, but it's really that young adult period of time that they see the greatest amount of diagnoses. So people with seasonal affective disorder, as we mentioned before, they kind of tend to overproduce that hormone melatonin, but they also produce less vitamin D. We're going to talk a little bit later about this great role of vitamin D, not only in dealing with seasonal affective disorder and beating these blues, but in actually improving our immune system. So that's something that is kind of crosses the line there on that one. So what are the symptoms? Well, we've got some listed up here on the screen. You can see those. So, changes in our appetite or our weight, just that whole change in how we sleep, and the fact that we may want to sleep a lot more. Fatigue and decreased energy. I just don't feel like doing anything. I know in the early winter when it gets dark so early, and it's just like, oh, I don't want to get up and do exercise. Oh, I don't even want to go out and go shop when I have to. There's that inability to concentrate. It's hard to concentrate on things. We lose our concentration and we may become irritable. And some of us just tend to withdraw. I tend to hibernate. I know that. I have a 94-year-old neighbor, and she tells me she truly does hibernate in the winter. And then we have that sadness and anxiety and hopelessness. But then the winter blues are just a little bit different. While we do have some of those same things, it's kind of that we're just sluggish, we're sleepy, we have the depressed mood, we're just less social. So you see a lot of similarities as we go through those two pieces. So how do we beat the winter blues? Well, let's look at some options. We're going to talk about unitasking. Be mindful in the moment. So I'm sure most all of you have heard the term multitasking. If you're like me, are we good at multitasking? We might think we are, but are we really? So multitasking is described as that ability to do many tasks simultaneously, which truthfully is almost impossible. A more accurate description is that ability to switch between multiple tasks and then to refocus on our priority task. So while mindfulness meditation training has the potential to help us become better in focusing our attention and more easily switching between tasks, there is also merit on focusing just on one task at a time. And when we focus on one task at a time, that is actually called unitask. It's purposefully turning out all the interference around us. So for some of us, that may mean we have to silence our phone. Some of us, it's turning off our email. Might be closing the door. For some of us, it's probably all three of those, okay? Multitasking tends to be inefficient, and it takes a lot of our time and our energy. Sometimes we do have to try to multitask because there's a lot of demands on our time, but there's also wisdom in knowing when to unitask. If I'm working on a big project, it's probably better for me to unitask than try to work on it while I'm also checking my voicemail messages or checking my text messages or looking at my emails and dealing with those interruptions. We have to give ourselves permission to say, I can only do one thing at a time. You're being intentional and you're being mindful then about whatever that priority task is. So some other ways that we think about being mindful in our daily task. I am right-handed, so I tend to do things such as I open a door, I just automatically do that with my right hand. So a mindfulness activity is try opening that door with the left hand. Yeah, that's going to feel really odd. It's going to feel different. It's going to take me out of my comfort zone a little bit. But that's something where we put ourselves actually in the role of a learner. We're learning how to do tasks with both hands instead of maybe just the one hand. Things such as learning to work to leave no trace. Okay, so you clean up after yourself so that nobody really knows that you were there. Sometimes we like to teach kids to do that, right? So sometimes it's being mindful of our posture. I teach a lot over Zoom and those kinds of things. We have a lot of meetings. And you look at the posture of people in those meetings, and we tend to kind of slouch down after a while, or we lean back, and it's like, I'm tired of sitting here. But think about your posture and how much better do we feel when we sit up straight, when we actually hold our posture in a more upright position there. So things then also we need to think about are just taking that time away from technology. Now, I know you might be one of those people say, oh, I can't do that. But let's think about it a minute. How would you feel if you were in a library where all the books on the shelves and all the people in the library were talking all at once? When that happens, we would probably start to filter out those things that were extraneous, those things that were less important. And in doing so, we start to realize, you know what? My attention span is not very long because I've got all this different information coming in. We have this pace in life that says, well, I need to be constantly connected, don't we? The constant notifications can be addicting. But that intermittent signal, oh, I got a message. Oh, somebody's thinking about me. Oh, there's a new Facebook post. Oh, there's a new Twitter post. Okay. So we're starting to say, well, I got to know what that says. And it has become very addicting. Most people check their phones quite frequently, even if it's not ringing or sending a notification. There's a Time magazine article or study that showed that 1 in 4 people check their phones every 30 minutes. You say, okay, well, that's not too bad. 1 in 5 people check it every 10 minutes. A third of the people admit to feeling anxious, almost like a withdrawal symptom, if they don't have their phone with them, even for a very short time. So think about how we've added that to our lives. Sometimes we need to step back and say, okay, it's okay to lay my phone down and not have it turned on. It's okay to take a break away from technology.
Mm-hmm.
Something else we need to do is think about creating. So some of us, we need to seek new experiences that can transform us, to see our world or our situation in new eyes, or maybe even just find a new purpose in life. So trying something new. So this has been a great time during the pandemic. A lot of my friends have tried new recipes. It's like, you know what? I've never fixed that. I'm going to try it. Sometimes it turns out, Sometimes it doesn't, but we've tried. So it's finding something new to do. It doesn't have to be big, you know. Challenge yourself maybe to write a short story about 3 totally unrelated things. Like that, why would I do that? When you do stuff like that, you start to build connections in your brain. You're keeping yourself energized. So things that we can do, try learning a new hobby. Okay, engage in a hobby. One of my coworkers, I didn't even know this until this week. She decided that during the pandemic, one thing she wanted to do was she's always wanted to learn to play the banjo. She started learning to play the banjo. And she was doing some music with her nephews. It was so much fun to watch those videos, and they were all having such a good time. Think about practicing gratitude and kindness. You know, we have this saying at work that we need to give each other some grace. We need to give each other some flexibility. Things aren't like they were, and we can get caught up in all the negative stuff. But let's think about some of the things that we can do. Whoopsie, I just went way past myself. Some of the things that we can do to help ourselves be more connected. So it could be things such as, you know, becoming more socialized. Okay. So we tend to hibernate. Switch back over here just a second. My papers got all messed up on me.
I understand that completely.
Bad. Go back here. Okay. So this one, thinking about, you know, one of the things, just writing those notes of gratitude and kindness. How many times do we just sit down and write a card to somebody just because we're thinking about them? You know, most of us love to get something where somebody's mailed us something and it's like, oh wow, they were thinking about me. But do we do that for other people? So think about those kinds of activities as we move forward. So connecting. Well, we want to hibernate. I want to hibernate. But make a date with a friend, with a family member, even if it's something just as simple as saying, "Hey, let's go take a walk." I have a really good friend that lives down the street, and she and I oftentimes will just say, we'll just text each other and say, "Hey, let's go take a walk." And it might only be a 15-minute walk, but it's just getting up, getting moving, and that connection with somebody else. We can connect, you know, today's technology is wonderful in regard that we can do those video calls. I'm not originally from this area, but I have a lot of family that live away from here. I have great nieces and nephews that send me pictures over videos all the time. We send stuff back and forth, and we've connected that way. And they're young, and so they're always sending me, you know, with all the filters on them. And it's so much fun for us to connect that way.
Mhm.
Talk to people about how you're feeling. Okay. Talk about your feelings, your concerns. Connect with your community, those faith-based organizations. I've got volunteer up here too. Do you know that there are some organizations that you can actually do virtual volunteering with? So if you're interested in that, you can send me a note. I'll give you a link to that. It's powerof.org. And you can find some different organizations where you can be a virtual volunteer. Sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. Now, laughing and playing and having fun. You know, kids laugh so much more than we as adults do, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So here's some really neat information. So first of all, we know laughter provides us good physical exercise and it decreases the risk of respiratory infections. So we're starting to move in toward this immune system piece now. So we're going to decrease those respiratory infections by laughing. We also produce endorphins when we laugh. It makes us feel good. And here's the best reason of all to laugh. 20 seconds of hard laughter is the cardiovascular equivalent to 3 minutes of strenuous rowing.
Wow.
So what would you rather do? I much rather would laugh than I would to be rowing. So why not find some things to laugh about? You know, it's so easy to get down and to get look at all the negative stuff. Go on YouTube if you want to find some things to laugh about. Just do some Google searches. There's tons of stuff out there. Look for the funny things in life. There's so much out here we can laugh about. It could be something we did ourselves. It's like, man, Treva, that was the craziest thing you've done. What were you thinking? Obviously, you weren't. Okay. But thinking about those types of things that make us laugh, don't be afraid to laugh out loud. Now, being with Family Consumer Sciences, I would be totally remiss if I didn't say, let's talk just a little bit about nutrition. We're going to talk about a little bit different other than me saying you need this number of servings, you need these particular types of things. We're going to look at the pieces that are really geared toward our immune system. So there, we know there's no substitute for that good nutrition. But one of the things we really need to try to do is we need to keep in mind that tried and true healthful eating advice that we keep our energy levels high by eating a balanced diet, that we have a variety of those unrefined carbohydrates. We have protein, fat, but we have a really big emphasis on our vegetables, our whole grains, and our healthy oils. So we're going to start by looking just at these pictures here of these bright colored food. And once again, bright colors always tend to make us more happy just looking at them. But when we choose more orange and bright colored vegetables, such as our carrots, our sweet potatoes, squash, mangoes, even some of our fruits, our tomatoes, our oranges, grapefruit, broccoli. These items are all really high in an antioxidant that's called beta carotene. Now, we often think about beta carotene being good for our eyes, and it is, but beta carotene also has been shown to strengthen the body's infection fighting methods. So if we're trying to fight off infections and keep from having infection, those bright colored vegetables, that beta carotene in those really is one of those nutrients that we need to be sure we're getting plenty of in our diets in order to help us boost our immune system and to be healthier. Another thing we need to think about is vitamin C. Now, for me personally, I have a huge sensitivity to acidic foods. So I can't eat grapefruit. I can't drink oranges. And so getting vitamin C becomes a little bit of a challenge if I'm looking to get it from my foods. But the good news is, do you know that peppers have almost the same amount of vitamin C as an orange? Most people don't know that. But that's an awesome thing for me because thankfully I can eat the peppers. I can't eat the citrus products. But foods that are rich in vitamin C are citrus products. Kiwi is another one that is. Broccoli has a lot of vitamin C. Berries, tomatoes also do. So starting our day with with some grapefruit, or adding peppers to a sandwich at lunch, or maybe having some berries as part of a snack, are really some of the ways that we can increase that vitamin C. We know vitamin C is important to help us keep our immune system strong and also fight infections. Herbs and spices can also be used to flavor our foods, and we look for those that have that salt because we want that salt-free or low-salt options. So herbs and spices such as our garlic and our ginger, our oregano, rosemary, and thyme are great options for this. But these herbs and spices also contain ingredients that, guess what? They help fight off viruses and harmful bacteria, and they boost our immune system. So it's not just that they taste good in our food, we're actually helping make us healthier by having those in our diet. So eating something like a garlic hummus, adding garlic even to, oftentimes I'll fix green beans and I'll add garlic, the minced garlic, to my green beans. Just gives it a little bit of extra flavor, but it also gives me that additional help. You can also add oregano or rosemary to salads, to roasted or grilled vegetables, or even to a tuna salad. Now, vitamin D, and this is another one. It's all in the news. I know there's a lot of information out there about vitamin D today. But remember, I mentioned vitamin D earlier when we were talking about seasonal affective disorder. And the fact that those folks that have seasonal affective disorder tend to have a lower level of vitamin D. Their body just doesn't produce it. It's not utilizing it. And oftentimes, we're not putting enough vitamin D into our system. So vitamin D is found in our fatty fish, our eggs, mushrooms, fortified milk, fortified orange juice. Vitamin D is essential for optimal immune function. And again, just like some of our other things, this has also been shown to reduce respiratory infection. So again, something that's, and I don't base this entirely on the COVID piece that is currently in our environment, but I think, we hear this in relation to COVID treatments a lot. They give you a lot of doses of vitamin D. Well, once again, we know that vitamin D helps reduce those respiratory infections that are often present with the COVID virus. And the other one that we hear a lot of in relation to that is zinc. Now, zinc is it's one of those minerals in our body that most of us probably truthfully never paid a lot of attention to. But if you're like me, you've probably started reading more of those labels and saying, well, does this have zinc in it? Well, how much zinc does this have? And so many people take a multivitamin, and that multivitamin may have some zinc in it, but we can actually increase our zinc in our system through our food consumption. And our body tends to absorb a lot more of it through the food as we consume it. So zinc again is key to our optimal immune system. Intake tends to be lower, especially for those folks that are older, or if you are a vegetarian, a vegan, or someone who takes antacids. So if you take antacids for stomach, for heartburn, that kind of thing, your body is not absorbing as much of the zinc as it would without taking the antacids. So we have to be very careful about when we're eating the foods with zinc. We don't want to take the antacid right away because that would reduce the absorption of the zinc. So foods that contain zinc are things such as meats. Seafood has a lot of zinc in it, as well as our sunflower seeds and our pumpkin seeds. Those are so easy to add to our salads, particularly the sunflower seeds. We can put a few of those in our salad and gives a little bit of a crunch to it, but also know you're adding some zinc to your diet when you do that. Another piece that we are hearing a lot of in the news today is also about probiotics. So I teach a lot of food safety classes, and we talk about the fact that there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria, and we have both of them present in our bodies. So what we're trying to do here with probiotics is we're focusing on that good bacteria, the bacteria we want more of in our system. So we know that good bacteria actually promotes health. And where do we find this probiotics? We can find it in some of our cultured dairy products. Now, you need to read the labels on foods such as particularly yogurts to see how that is listed on that particular one. And then also our fermented foods like kimchi is a really, really good source of probiotics or good bacteria. And that's made through a fermentation process. So it's got a little bit more of the bite to it. The kimchi does when you eat that. Other things we need are protein. Now, we talk about having a diet that's got lots of fruits and vegetables in it, which is important, but we don't want to leave out the fact that you got to have protein to boost your immune system. Protein's where we get that long-term energy source that helps us keep going. It helps build our muscles. So protein can be from either an animal or a plant-based source. Doesn't matter. Either one is good. So we have things such as our milk, our yogurt and eggs, our beef, chicken, seafood. But we also have nuts and seafood seafood, nuts and seeds, beans and lentils are all really good source of protein. So one of the things you can do sometimes is, there's a trend out here to do a meatless Monday. Well, meatless Monday, still we can keep boosting our immune system by simply getting our protein from other sources, not necessarily always from meat. Now the one that I know you really don't want me to talk about, okay? Because these are our comfort foods. These are the things we do when we get stressed. So we know that increasing your intake of nutrient-dense foods can protect our immune system. But we also need to minimize our intake of sugar, processed foods, and alcohol, because these foods actually suppress our immune system. And they really, truthfully, they make us more vulnerable and more susceptible to viral and bacterial infections. Now, am I saying, notice I use the word minimize. I didn't say eliminate. Because when we talk about diets and we talk about our eating habits, if I told you to eliminate those things, what's the first thing you would want? You'd want those foods. Because our mind just automatically says, if you tell me I can't have something, by golly, that's the thing I want the most. And so we don't say you have to eliminate it. We simply say you need to minimize it. Because different kinds of food are converted to energy at different rates. Some things, such as our candy and our simple sugars, they may give you a really quick lift. But others, such as our whole grains and our healthy unsaturated fats, they supply those reserves that we draw on throughout the day. Limiting our sugar and our white starches to only occasional treats is a better option for us. While you get that quick boost, that feeling fades quickly and actually can leave us depleted. And oftentimes we're craving more of those sweets. So this is something we need to minimize these. Don't have to eliminate them, but it's not something we want to have all the time. So nutrition is one way that we boost our immune system. It's one way we deal with those winter blues. We get ourselves healthier by the foods that we choose. But we also need to just get outside and stay active. Now, yeah, this week's probably not the best week for that if you're here in Southern Ohio. I actually live in Kentucky and I'm over here in Boyd County, and yeah, we got lots of ice over here. So many of my friends right now don't have any electric. It's very icy out. So getting out and taking a walk is fine as long as it's not too icy or it's not too cold. Make sure you do dress for the weather, okay? And just getting out into the air sometimes just makes us feel better. Now, I will tell you, one thing we often forget in this time of year, be sure you still put on that sunscreen. You said, Treva, okay, it's 25 degrees outside and you're telling me to wear sunscreen? Yes, I am. Okay. Because we think about the sun's rays reflecting off of water and sand, but it also reflects off snow and ice. Okay, so we can get actually a burn from the sun even in the winter. Now you have to be out there much longer, but we still damage our skin. So put that sunscreen on even in the middle of the winter. We also might want to think about practicing our mindfulness or meditating as we walk. So pay attention to those things that are around you, the sounds, the smells. Let your mind focus on the present moment. Walk a little slower than normal and focus on what's happening around you. If you notice that your mind's wandering and you're thinking about work, you're thinking about what you got to do when you get back, gently bring yourself back to the moment. Enjoy where you are. Yeah, we need to keep an open awareness about what's going on around us, but then at the end of the walk, take a moment, stand still, and just take in where you've been. I also have a good friend who calls herself a bird nerd. Okay. When she walks, she does take her camera with her. And guess what she's taking pictures of? She's taking those bird pictures. And she has some fabulous bird pictures. It's her hobby. So she's getting her exercise, she's getting outside, she's staying active, she's keeping her mind engaged, and she's doing something she totally enjoys by taking her pictures of the birds. So when we get outside, we have a lot of different options when we're spending that time in nature. Now, we talk about exercise and we talk about physical activity, and some of us want to say it's the same thing. But there's a slight difference here. So exercise is a planned, structured, repetitive body movement. Okay, that means I plan to do this. It's something I'm doing over and over and over and over. So it could be walking, could be jogging, could be swimming. Okay, it's a repetitive physical movement. Physical activity is any activity that works our muscles and requires energy. And that can include things such as work, or it could be household activities or leisure activities. So washing my car, not now in this weather, but washing my car can be physical activity. Okay. But it's not really truly exercise because it's not all the same. We're not doing one particular repetitive body movement. Now, how much exercise do we need? Well, the 2018 Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans recommend that we have at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity, such as brisk walking, fast dancing, each week. Now, the good news is I don't have to do that all at once, which is a really good thing. So we can break that down into 5 30-minute sessions, or I can break it into even smaller sessions. Because even if I do 3 10-minute walks a day, that counts. That adds up. But we need to do at least a 10-minute segment there. So muscle strengthening activity, such as like lifting weights or doing push-ups, those kinds of things, we need to do those at least 2 days a week. So whether you get outside or not, there are benefits to regular exercise. It improves our mood. It helps us get that helps us build those endorphins, which then makes us feel better. Now, sleep. But I just told you that sleep was something we want to do when we have seasonal affective disorder, right? But are we getting the right kind of sleep? And are we getting it on a regular basis? That becomes the challenge. So getting enough sleep is critical to our overall health. We know that a lack of sleep contributes to a variety of health concerns, including that weakened immune system. As adults, we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a day or a night. Okay. Now, if any of you have young children, they actually need 8 to 14 hours of sleep a day, depending on their age. It's a lot more sleep than we as adults get. So when we're sleeping, it helps us provide our body with energy. It helps our body repair itself, and it increases the blood supply to our muscles. Our bodies produce hormones during sleep that contribute to our mood. So sometimes one of the things we need to remember is thinking about what are we doing before we go to bed. First of all, we need to think about maintaining a regular going to bedtime and waking up time. This helps our body become more regulated. And it's best if we keep that same routine even on the weekends when there is that temptation to sleep in. I have found myself, I get up pretty much the same time every day. And on the weekend, my body just naturally wakes up at the same time that I tend to wake up during the week because it has become a pattern for me. And so every day I get up every morning about 6:30 or 7 o'clock, depending on the day. But it's always within that same range of time. And I don't even have to set the alarm. I do, but 9 times out of 10, I'm awake before the alarm goes off. Just a few minutes. We also need to be careful about watching television or other electronics an hour before going to bedtime. Now, I will say this does not affect everyone, but if you are having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, you really need to try to limit some of those electronic uses because they can disrupt the melatonin production when we are trying to sleep. The other temptation we often have is we want to say, well, I need my phone beside the bed because why? I use it as my alarm. So I need to have my phone there. But then what do? You wake up in the middle of the night, and what's the first thing you do? You grab your phone. So then we wonder why we're not really resting well because now we've broken that sleep cycle. So electronics, we don't need them beside us in the bed. Invest in an alarm clock, put it across the room. I know it's old fashioned, but it still works.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing about sleeping is we need to make sure that we create that dark, quiet, cool, comfortable room. And we need a comfortable mattress and pillows. Life cycle of a mattress is about 10 years. So if your mattress is older than 10 years and you're not been sleeping very good, maybe you need a new mattress. That can make a huge difference in how we rest. And so we also need to think about replacing our pillows often because over time they don't maintain the same support that they do when we first have them. Shouldn't have to say this one just really quick, but washing our hands is critically important. We hear that every time we turn around right now. In addition to washing our hands, we also need to be sure that we always wash our produce under cool running water before we eat it or we use it in recipes. That's something we absolutely need to make sure we do, and then make sure that you're always getting all your dishes and your forks, knives, spoons, glasses, all those kinds of things need to be washed to reduce that spread of bacteria and viruses, I should say. So what do we need to do to stay motivated? Well, here are a couple things. Focus on the things that you enjoy. If you don't like walking, then don't plan to go walking, okay? Find another way to get your exercise. A friend of mine from church, she's like, Treva, I can't walk. I don't like to walk. But she's doing a dance class with her daughter. That's what they decided to do. And she's loving it. She's getting her exercise, but she's not doing it through the use of walking. So find what it is that you like because that will keep us motivated. Also, we make it a social activity. If you can find someone to go with you, that's even better. So whether that is a family member, a friend, or take your dog out for a walk. Those are things that will help us be more motivated, I guess. We'll make sure that we're comfortable, so it shouldn't be painful. If you haven't been exercising at all, probably need to check with your doctor before you start, just to make sure that there's no health concern with that. And then this time of year, particularly, man, you got to dress appropriately. It's cold out there. Okay, so wear layers because then you can take a layer off if you need to, rather than wearing one great big heavy coat or one big heavy sweatshirt. So thinking about dressing appropriately, comfortable shoes are critical also. Reward yourself. You know what? Thinking about how am I going to reward myself, and rewarding yourself is not by going back and having that piece of candy, okay, or that piece of cake, but thinking about, okay, so I've done my exercise, so now what am I going to do to reward myself? Maybe it's, you know what, I'm going to sit down here and I'm going to watch this show on television that I really like, and I just don't get a chance to watch it all the time. That's going to be my reward to me. Okay. Or maybe it's reading a book or doing an activity. It's also time, though, for us to set some goals. So goals need to be what we call SMART. Okay. So a SMART goal means it's specific. So what's my goal? I'm going to walk. And if it's, maybe some of us have set ourselves step goals. Okay. So you may set a goal to say, you know, I haven't been walking very much. So I'm not going to go from walking 2,000 steps a day to 10,000 steps a day all in 1 week, because I won't get it done. So if I set my goal to say, okay, this week I'm going to go, instead of doing 2,000 steps, I'm going to double that. I'm going to do 4,000 steps this week. And I do that every day. I want to get my 4,000 steps. So is that measurable? Yes, it's very measurable because I'm tracking it. Maybe it's that I want to increase the amount of water I'm consuming, because maybe I haven't been drinking enough water. I can measure how much water I'm drinking every day. Keep track of it. Our goal also needs to be attainable and achievable. If you have young children and you're a single parent, saying that you're going to go out and take a walk for 30 minutes every day may not always be attainable and achievable. So think about what it is you can do given your lifestyle, given the time that you can invest in the mindfulness practice. So thinking about what it is, what's attainable. If we set that goal too high, if I plan to go from 2,000 steps to 10,000 steps in a week, that goal's too high for this girl, and it's not going to happen. So I'll just quit. I won't do it. So I make the goal attainable by saying, go from 2,000 to 4,000. Next week, if I get my 4,000 every day, next week I might go from 4,000 to 6,000. And I keep building it up. And eventually I'll be at the 10,000, but I'll have done it in increments versus all at one time. Make your goal relevant. Make it to fit your needs. Okay. For myself, personally, I have extremely low blood pressure. So me reducing my salt intake isn't quite as critical as it is for some of my friends who have very high blood pressure. So thinking about what's relevant to you, what's relevant for your life, and then make it time bound. So you notice I said I was going to set, one of my goals was to go from 2,000 to 4,000 steps in a week. I was going to, every day I was going to do 4,000 steps. So it's time bound. When am I going to have this done by? Maybe you've decided you want to try a new, maybe part of setting that goal might be you want to learn something new. So by a certain time, you want to have mastered a particular skill. Set yourself a goal. Because I always use the analogy of, if I don't have a goal, it's like someone shooting a bow and arrow without a target. What are you going to hit? Are you going to hit the goal? You won't know if you don't have it. So set the goal. Seek help when needed. You know, one of the things that we talk about with the winter and the winter blues, sometimes people have asked about using the light therapy boxes. There are some resources out there. Consult your doctor before you purchase one. Okay. They are designed to be safe and they're effective, but I will say that they aren't approved or regulated by the Food and Drug Administration for seasonal affective disorder. So know that they're there. They're not a regulated item when it comes to treatments. So just be sure you understand your options with that. But a light therapy box mimics the outdoor light, and researchers believe that that type of light can cause the chemical change in our brain that lifts our mood and helps ease some of our symptoms. So we know small changes can make a big impact on our health. Start with small changes become big changes over time. And finally, my favorite picture. Remember, spring is coming. Winter isn't going to last forever, even here in Ohio. February has seemed a whole lot worse than November, December, and January, but it will eventually be here.
Yeah.
So today, here are just some of the resources I've used. I do want to draw your attention. If you're really interested in some of these topics, OSU Extension has a couple of blogs that you can sign up for. You can get the email, you get a blog article sent. They send you a link to those a couple times a week typically. So we have Live Smart Ohio and we have livehealthyosu.com. Live Smart Ohio is .osu.edu, and then the livehealthyohio.com is another one that we do, which just really kind of give you those little boosts sometimes that you need. So with that, I will end my presentation.
Do we have questions?
That's what I was going
to be
ask.
Echoing. Treva, I really appreciate you doing this. And there are so many points that I took from this. I love the thought of unitasking. I love that. And I had never heard that before.
That is a new one.
Yes. And that's what I have to do. Just focus in on one thing and take care of it or deal with that or do it. Yes. Sometimes before I go on to others. And the healthy diet, I have been an exerciser for years.
Right.
And right now I am so anxious to be outside that I've almost taken my treadmill out on the carport so that I could walk outside instead of being inside. So all of this just applies so much to me and I can relate to it. Wow. And I just really appreciate you being here and sharing these things with us. And I want to let everybody know that I can get the information, and I have some of the information. If you would like to get a hold of Treva or any of the sources that she's used, we can get that for you. Yes. Okay. All right. I really
appreciate you having me here. Were there any questions? Because I can't see the.
No, we didn't have any questions. We just had a couple of comments and just basically, it's amazing what good food can do for us is one of them.
It really is. Yeah.
So again, we really appreciate you being here. Hopefully we'll have you back.
I hope so.
Absolutely. So you have a good afternoon.
Thank you. And thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.